You are now listening to
Chakras and Shotguns.
Welcome back to Chakras and Shotguns. This is episode 35. I'm Mik.
And I'm Jenn. Welcome back.
So what's going on? How you feeling?
We've been on the Hot Mess Express lately.
I know, hopping out of a pandemic into what feels like to be a Cold War, World War III.
I know.
We don't know what it really can look like.
I was even talking on a micro level. You know, Texas can't handle any type of snow or ice. So we've had a couple of snow days with the kids, which kind of threw off our whole routine and what we can and can't get done during a business day.
For sure.
And then in the midst of all that, it's like, bam, Russia's invading Ukraine. I'm like, I'm sorry, excuse me?
Yeah, I think we were talking about this, how in the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, they were evacuating due to imminent, missile strikes coming in from Russia. And they didn't really have a lot of time to prepare.
Right.
There had been kind of a troop buildup on the border, and the U.S. was warning, like, its citizens to get out. But the Ukraine was kind of like, we don't know of anything. You're creating panic. I don't know if you saw that, where the president of Ukraine was kind of admonishing Biden for issuing the warning. He was like, you're creating panic. Like, we don't know of anything. He said something like, if you know about an imminent attack, like, let us know almost. And it was like, what's going on? Like, why aren't y'all ready? But nonetheless, the people, the citizens of the capital, they were in a situation where these attacks were coming and they didn't have a ton of time. And so it just made me think about our bug out bag episode. Like, imagine you have 30 minutes to an hour and you know you need to leave your house. Like, do you know what you're going to take with you? Do you have a bag with some of the essentials already put together so that you can be really efficient with that time to get your family out of there?
Yeah, I saw pictures of people with like huge suitcases, and I think they bombed the airport too. Yeah. So flights weren't an option. They said there were traffic jams of people just trying to get out of town. Like, so the whole question of, do I hunker down, stay in place? But if they're bombing, and I've never been to the Ukraine. I don't know, like, what the setup would be like.
Yeah.
But if they're bombing and it's something fairly metropolitan, like, think of like them bombing downtown, like, where do you hunker down? So people are in the subway stations, like, just standing around in a subway station trying to be safe, which is just, I think sometimes America's so big and we can think of things that are so far away as like not real almost. Like, you're removed from it. And it's like if somebody just like rolled up in San Francisco or Dallas or Miami and just started like bombing things, I think people don't really understand the gravity of that, of like what that really, really means. I think we always like remove ourselves from what war is.
Yeah. And I'm seeing reports that China's going to try to take Taiwan potentially. They've been doing these flights with their military to potentially go over there and try to basically do what Russia's doing in Ukraine. And so what happens if NATO countries, the U.S., decide to intervene? Does that mean we could see something over here,
Yeah. And they were saying that Putin kind of teased, like, you don't want that smoke. Yeah. That, he has nuclear warheads, which is, so freaking frustrating for me because, well, one, we can't individually do anything. Like, I don't have Putin's number and be like, yo, you need to chill. But it's frustrating from that standpoint. And then it's just like, gosh, why can't we just leave the world a little better than we found it?
Yeah.
That's when I get into my hippie bag and I'm just like, why can't we all just get along? Like, why is it that deep? I think it made us start thinking through our own preps because so much of this is out of our control that it would be foolish to be like, well, that's not my problem, because it could darken any of our doorsteps. We just don't know. Not to be an alarmist, but like that's what being prepared is thinking through worst case scenarios.
You can only control what you can control.
Exactly.
Right? And so we can control making sure that our family has what it needs to be able to survive an extended period of time without the modern conveniences that a lot of us have gotten used to. And so that's what we want to encourage you guys to be thinking about as well.
Yeah. I think our other thing that we've integrated to escape all of the micro and macro chaos that is going on around us is we started watching a new show. Mik and Jenn are the queen and king of, or king and queen, yes, of starting a new show and not finishing the ones that we've already started.
Yes,
because we have a lot of shows that we have not finished. However, this new show is right up our alley. It's called Love Off the Grid.
Yep.
And the downside is that you can only watch it on Discovery Plus. So we're trying to watch it all before our free trial runs out. It's about people who live off the grid and they're trying to bring their romantic partners, there's a polyamorous couple in there, into their quote-unquote homestead life. So they're throughout the country.
Yeah, there's like one in North Carolina, one in Alabama, one in Colorado, and then where's the woman? Is she
Arizona?
She's in Arizona.
She's in the desert.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, girl.
Yeah.
It's hard. I've looked into living off the grid in the desert because it's fascinating to me. It's difficult.
Yeah. Mainly because you have to like truck in your water.
Yeah. You can get to an aquifer below your property, but it can be difficult. How far away is it? And it's still the desert.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's interesting. It looks hot up in there.
Yeah, I actually want to do an episode with someone who lives off grid. I have someone in mind who I'm thinking of like inviting. So
okay,
I see that as a potential future episode. Not to digress, but the show is awesome.
It's really, really good. It's a little raunchy.
Yeah, the Discovery Plus, they don't have a lot of bleeps and edits. They let it fly on there,
Woo! People telling us way too much about our sex life and their sex life in the first episode. I'm like, okay. There's a little May-December romance. This older woman with like this 27-year-old man.
Is that what that means? May, December?
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard that phrase before.
You don't read enough romance novels.
Clearly.
But yes, it's a great show. One guy like barters his hunts for vegetables from this other guy's farm. Like, it's pretty cool. Like, one guy's building a house with his bare hands.
Yeah.
So
he got his boo out there helping him to lift the walls up and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of cool. So check it out if you're interested in just kind of seeing how that lifestyle works. And then, there's an interesting human element of them with these urban city-dwelling boos coming out there and trying to adjust to this lifestyle. So it's interesting and entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
All right. You want to do a little bit of breath work?
Yes. Let's get into it. So, candidly, I have been experiencing quite a bit of burnout from a myriad of things, and I don't think that's out of the norm. We're like on year 3 of the pandemic. People have small children. Jobs are asking more and more and more of people, and there haven't been, depending on how you deal with COVID, as many opportunities to like get away and find release and make yourselves a priority. So this breath work is for anybody who is feeling like those overwhelming feelings of just being like, I don't really have more to give. I'm at my limit, and we're just going to take some time to just like breathe and be still and do some affirmations to just kind of combat those feelings. So let's find a comfortable seat. Close your eyes. Take a deep inhale in through your nose, expanding your belly, and sigh that out audibly out through your mouth. Let's do that again. Inhale in through your nose. Filling yourself up with air. Let yourself sit up a little bit straighter. Stretch your arms over your head if you want. And sigh that all out through your mouth. We're going to do one more. Inhale in through your nose. Noting where you feel tense. Noting what you might be holding right now. And release all of that, sighing out loud through your mouth. Now seal your lips, inhaling and exhaling in through your nose and out through your nose. Now that you found a bit of stillness, notice where you might still feel a little tension. Are your shoulders up high by your ears? And roll them down and bring them down to a relaxed position. Are your hands clenched? Do you just feel tired? Reconnect with your body. And let the tension melt away. I wanted to do some affirmations. And you can repeat them out loud or just to yourself. I make myself a priority. Sometimes we get so caught up in our to-dos that we put ourselves last at the bottom of the list, and we often find we ran out of energy to even get to ourselves. So I make myself a priority. I am entitled to rest. And the last affirmation I wanted to do is because I want us to focus in on what brings us energy, what brings us joy, and what drains us, and really start taking an inventory of those things. So the last affirmation is, I am free of anything that doesn't sustain me. I hope these few little moments made you feel a little bit more powerful over your energy, your rest, your self-care. All right.
Thanks, Jen. I actually really needed to hear that. I had a conversation with a Reiki practitioner this week, and I was talking to her about me, being a Reiki practitioner and working with clients. And she was really harping on basically that whole, you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to prioritize yourself to make sure that you are resting, filling yourself with energy, doing yourself Reiki treatments, and really prioritizing that before you can kind of give that healing to others.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was good to hear that. And I feel like it just dovetailed nicely from that conversation to this breath work. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. My body quite literally told me to lay down yesterday. It was the worst timing in the world. I pulled something in my back, in my upper back, and it was super painful. And I'm picking up kids, like literally picking them up. I'm cleaning and doing and sitting at my desk and, here, there, and everywhere. And my back was like, nope, not today. Go lay down. And I hated that my body had to give me the stop sign, that I wasn't more aware and didn't take more ownership over myself and my body and like taking care of myself, right? I think this goes nicely with what we're going to talk about today, which is human design, because I'm a manifester and part of my conditioning is not knowing when enough is enough. And I'm always like, okay, I'm just going to do this one extra thing. Okay, I'm just going to empty out the dishwasher. Okay, and then I'm just going to send out this email. And then I'm just going to organize the girls' stuff. And you just keep doing that until you hit this brick wall and your body is like, no, not today.
All right, let's get into our main topic. We are picking back up on our human design series today. If you haven't listened to our first 3 episodes on human design, go back and listen to those in order. Those are episodes 31, 32, and 33. The system is complicated. And so if you're unfamiliar with human design and haven't listened to our previous episodes, you might get lost. So definitely want to make sure you go back and check those out.
Today, we're jumping into profiles. Your profile is a set of conscious and subconscious archetypes that you tend to naturally embody. So if everyone in your life, we're all kind of characters in a play, like each individual character is a profile, if you want to think about it that way. So something we haven't talked about yet are all of the symbols in the red and black columns that are on your chart. So these are typically off to the side, or you might see them depending on where you rank your chart. You might see one column on one side of your chart and one column on the other. One's red, one's black. The red is the unconscious or subconscious part of your personality. And it can be how others perceive you and how you move through the world. Some people even call this column like, that's your body. Almost that, you know what I mean? It doesn't really think, but it's how you move through the world. The black column represents the conscious part of your design, what you may be more aware of, how your mind works, how you think. The top symbol on both of those columns is the astrological symbol for the sun. So it looks like a circle with a dot in the middle.
So as a reminder from our astrology episodes, your sun sign, which is that symbol, is the strongest representation of you. So if you want to go back and listen to that, it was our big 3 episode on astrology. This sun sign, it represents your willpower and your creativity.
Now that you found your sun sign on your human design chart, we can then get to your profile. So you're looking at the decimal number on each number. And that number is going to be something from 1 through 6. For instance, my conscious sun, so in my black column, the top symbol says 13.5. And my unconscious sun says 43.1. But I'm looking at the 0.5 and the 0.1 of each of those. So that means that I'm a 5-1 profile.
Jenn's a 5-1. What does that even mean? Where does that come from? Well, the numbers 1 through 6, they pull directly from the I Ching, which is an ancient Chinese divination system. Let's have a little bit of a crash course really quickly on the I Ching and its history. So it is an ancient text that means book of changes. It dates back more than 3,000 years to the Zhou dynasty, and that's spelled Zhou. If you are really a history nerd, the I Ching actually told the Zhou dynasty how to overthrow the Shang dynasty, and that's actually how they rose to power in China. It's also the basis for Confucianism and Taoism, which are the 2 major branches of Chinese philosophy.
Yeah, Confucius said that if he had 50 years to spare, he would devote them to just studying the I Ching. I actually have a copy, and when I first got it, it made my eyes cross a little. I was also reading some really dense, super old other like spiritual esoteric texts, so I didn't really know how to navigate it. I honestly approached it like it was a new fantasy novel. And so I was like trying to read it from like cover to cover, but that's not really how you use it. Getting ready for this episode actually has given me like renewed interest in working with the I Ching. It has influenced fields as varied as mathematics, science, medicine, martial arts, philosophy, history, literature, art, ethics, military affairs, the Zhao dynasty. They were like, how are we going to take these people down? And the I Ching was like, do this, this, this. And even religion. So it's also affected religion, which is pretty cool.
Definitely. So to use the I Ching, they call it casting. And a common method is they take 3 coins and they throw them 6 times while focusing on a specific question and recording the outcome. The outcome will be a hexagram, so 6 lines in a specific pattern. And from there, you can look up the hexagram in the text, and there's a translation, and that translation will get you the answer to your question.
It's a complex system. Like even trying to distill this down to even talk about on the podcast, my eyes were just like, okay. There can be readings within readings depending on how your pattern shakes out. Like you can have a reading of like, well, this is the present state and this is what you should do in the future. So just tugging a little bit on this one thread that is incorporated in human design. Like the I Ching is incorporated into the entire human design system. And I Ching itself is incredibly complex. That just gives you a taste of how unique and complex the human design system has to be. But what does all of that have to do with your human design profile? The numbers in the profile correlate with the 6 lines of an I Ching hexagram.
All right, my head's spinning a little bit, but hopefully you guys are following. Now that you know how to find your profile, one thing I wanted to mention on conscious versus subconscious. And again, that's like the 2 numbers in your profile. So Jen mentioned 5-1. The conscious part of you is what you know about yourself. It's what you can easily see and feel from within. The subconscious is how you appear to others. And so as subconscious, the name would suggest you're not necessarily easily seeing and feeling it. So basically, the breakdown of the 2 numbers is how you see yourself versus how others see you. Now let's jump into lines 1 through 6 that can appear in your profile. So first up, line number 1, it has the name, the investigator. These people are very introspective. They like to research and get to the bottom of things, and they often like to do it alone. They may not always work well with others, preferring to work alone. They want to observe what works and what doesn't. So we did some digging to see who, from a famous celebrity standpoint, has some of these lines in their profile. And one I saw for the line 1 is Will Smith. And now I think with actors, it's a little bit hard for us as people who don't really know them to kind of see how that line may kind of, show up. But I did see that Will Smith has a new show on Disney Plus, and it's called Welcome to Earth. And the whole premise of the show is basically Will going around talking to really interesting people who do very unique things and kind of investigating what they're all about. They're going deep down into the sea, they're going to the desert, they're going to all of these like really interesting places, and he's just like investigating the earth and talking about it with folks. So I see how that one line could probably come out there.
I also thought about his book that he came out with not that long ago about himself and his life and like how he's matured, over the course of his life. And that takes a tremendous amount of introspection, like of being able to look at yourself and be that self-aware.
Definitely.
So that's probably another way his one line came out.
Definitely.
Next up, line number 2. This one is called The Hermit. These people are very talented, and it's so natural to them, their talents. And because their talents are so inherent to who they are, they actually might not even think of them as talents. They usually want to be left alone, but the gag is they actually need to be recognized so they can share their gifts with the world. Only once they're seen can they realize the gifts that they actually have to share. So some celebrities with 2 lines, Janet Jackson, who I feel like has really big hermit energy. Like, she just did this documentary, and it's just like, she's so private. Like, she had that whole baby. I don't even know if we saw pictures of her pregnant, did we?
I don't think so. Is she even on IG like that? I don't know.
She does not. I don't think she shares pictures of her baby at all.
Got it.
She might like let us hear the baby's voice. I think we might know the baby's name. Like, we never really saw her out here in these streets. She's had like these very mysterious marriages that like people never really knew the ins and outs about. We never really knew all her business with Jermaine Dupri. I think even like the way she sings gives me hermit energy. Like, she's like, but she's extremely talented. People talk about the like secondary vocals on her tracks are like unmatched. The harmonies and stuff that she comes up with. But she's so private, you would never be like, oh, that's a musical genius. Especially like being the sister to Michael Jackson.
Yeah. As you were talking, it reminded me when I was looking for someone to put down for the line 2, I actually looked to see if Sade Adu's chart was available. It's not even like, you can't even find her birth time. Because she gives me very much hermit energy, right? Like, she'll put out an album, disappear. You don't hear nothing from her. She may do a tour. Like, it's very, very hermit energy. And so I wasn't able to confirm if she has a 2 line, but I would imagine that she does.
I can see that.
Someone else that does have a 2 line, though, is Dave Chappelle. So I want to talk about him. You know, I think just him living in like a very small town in Ohio and like wanting to be alone and kind of tucked away in small town America. And not really living in LA or New York like a lot of the other big Hollywood names that you can think of, I think very much shows his 2 line. And I also think about when he was really like going through the introspection of the Chappelle Show and how basically he felt like the comedy wasn't coming out the way he wanted it to be, and like how he was kind of having the conversations about race. And he just dipped and went to Africa, almost like a sabbatical on like a hermit type energy, you know?
Yeah, and he has a very unique perspective on the world. So I can see how he would struggle with wanting to be left alone, wanting to be in this small town in Ohio, but his voice needing to be shared in his perspective.
Yeah.
Which comes with certain conflicts too, but
yeah.
It does raise interesting conversations at the same time.
For sure.
Well, we don't have to get into all that.
So moving on to line number 3, this one is called The Martyr, which sounds dark, but you know, that's what they titled it as. I have a line 3 in my profile, so I was a little like thrown off when I first heard that. But folks with line 3, they are super versatile and adaptable. They live through trial and error. They can dust themselves off and try again if they fail. Relationship-wise, they're quick to tell when a relationship is working or if the energy is off. They are really perceptive to that. I like to think of the Jay-Z line, Hov did that, so hopefully you don't have to go through that when I think about the martyr. Because this is very much this energy of, I've done some things, I've tried them, I failed, and I can tell you what not to do. It's this trial and error constantly of that experimentation. And so, no surprise, Jay-Z actually has a line 3. And I just think about how he said that line in his song, talking about how his, life has progressed and the things that he would want others to avoid. But also just in his craft, he likes to experiment with a lot of different flows. He is very experimental in terms of like working with, who's that, Limp Bizkit? He did that one album with. He did an album with.
It was Linkin Park.
Okay, whatever.
I love that album.
I didn't listen to it, but
you didn't?
I don't do that. So
it was so good.
that's not my thing. That's not my ministry. So again, I thought it was Limp Bizkit because
those are my emo days.
I see. Did he also was he officially a part of the Gray album when he mixed the White album and the Black album together? Or was that just like a fan project?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if that, my Jay-Z knowledge is not that deep.
Okay. He also did Best of Both Worlds with R. Kelly, which was very experimental for the time. I know. He did the Justin Timberlake tour, him and JT together. Obviously, him and Kanye had an album together. So he's very much like, I'll try some different things. Him and Beyonce have an album together. Like he's willing to experiment and do things that maybe other rappers wouldn't necessarily try.
Yeah.
That was the whole point. Limp Bizkit, Linkin Park, whatever.
Wow. Wow. Sometimes I'll ask you about like certain emo bands and you just give me a blank stare. I was like, My Chemical Romance, Panic at the Disco.
Feel like I heard about them on an MTV commercial or something.
You don't know Panic at the Disco?
I couldn't tell you if they could walk up to me right now.
Oh, I don't know what any of them look like.
They could play a song right now. Whatever.
Guess what we're going to have on the speakers after we finish recording? Wow, if you could have seen his face. Now that Mik has shocked and appalled me about his lack of knowledge about some of my favorite acts from the early 2000s, we're going to move on. If you notice, as we were going through lines 1 through 3, there's a common theme there. And it's about the individual. It's, wanting to be alone, wanting to do your own research, doing experiments by yourself and kind of seeing how they all work out. It's about this individual experience. Lines 4 through 6, you'll start to see how these experiences are influenced by others and the collective. So we're going to kick off with line number 4, the opportunist. The opportunist. The 4th line is a master networker. I guess they're looking for opportunity. And maybe that's a better word for it than opportunist. Like they're a networker. Networking's not bad.
Yeah.
You're not trying to see where you can get an advantage. Like you're just trying to meet people.
Everybody tells you should be networking.
Extroverts tell you that. I'm about to go on a whole tangent.
There's still opportunity for introverts to network. It may be draining, but
it's draining. And I just told the listeners to take an inventory of what gives you energy and what drains your energy.
You're not networking. You haven't been to a networking event in 2 years because of COVID.
Because I've been taking inventory. And I put that by the wayside. I mean, well, it all depends on the type of event, the type of people that are going to be there. And I'm not saying like, how do I say this? Certain professions have very, very boring people. And I am an anomaly in mine because I'm not boring at all. But I would find myself in these events saying, wow, gosh, you're boring. No, I'm just kidding. That's terrible. I don't have a line 4, so I am not a master networker, obviously. But because they can navigate different groups of people very well, they can find themselves in traditional leadership roles, which is really good for them, as then they can then find the right opportunities for the team or the group that they're working for. They thrive on deep connections, and their quality of life depends on the quality of their relationship with their team. So whether that's work, family, or friends. So the example that we were able to find of a celebrity who has a 4 line, Oprah. She knows everybody, and everybody knows her. She's at the top of all of her different businesses and organizations, and just like even her network, and I mean, like literally her network own.
Yeah.
She can call in different people from different walks of life and have them talk about their experiences and what they do and their expertise. Like, yeah, I think Oprah is a great example of someone with a 4 line.
Definitely. So moving on to line 5. This one also has an interesting name. It's the heretic. People have had issues with this name for the line 5, but the definition of a heretic is a person holding an opinion that is at odds with what is generally accepted. So what that really means is that they can come into a situation and they can present an idea or a solution to a problem that no one has even considered. They are warriors and guides, but people can often project onto them as being the hero that will come and rescue them. Their work is all about grounding themselves and finding time to be introspective. That will help them determine if they're letting others determine who they are. So I did some looking on line 5 celebrities and came up with quite a few that I thought were interesting. So first, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X both have line 5s. So if you think about the civil rights movement, them presenting these ideas, being seen and projected on as if they were heroes, and they did have a lot of warrior energy when it came to, the fight for civil rights. So I think they are like perfect examples of that heretic energy.
So Malcolm X was an emotional projector. And if you remember, projectors emerge. They're like one of the more recent types, energy types to emerge. And they're considered the new types of leaders. And it was definitely new when he was kind of rising to, I don't want to say fame, but like people were noticing who Malcolm X was. And for people to project onto him, he is a new type of leader. He's presenting something that no one's ever really seen before. That's a lot. That's a lot that's going on there. So I probably want to dig into his profile some more.
Yeah. A couple other folks who I saw that are famous with line 5s, Eddie Murphy, who was definitely a trailblazer in comedy, had some pretty outlandish in some ways things to say that people weren't ready to hear. They felt like he was a little too abrasive. They talked about that in like the Cosby documentary, how Cosby like hated Eddie Murphy because of how brash he was.
The nerve.
I know. And then Michael Jordan also has a line 5. And I think when it comes to like the NBA and how it evolved and how players weren't always highlighted and branded before Michael Jordan, like Michael Jordan like really kind of brought this new energy, this new message of like player empowerment. He had the flashy shoes that I think at one point they got banned. Like one of his, I forget which pair, I think it might have been the ones, but I think a particular colorway was banned by the NBA for being like too out there and like not within the dress code of what was allowed to be worn on the floor.
I wonder if he ever felt a little resentful on teams that it was like, okay, MJ's going to save us. You know what I mean?
Yes, he had a lot of hero projection, I think, from the folks who were his teammates as well as the general public, right? He was looked at as his hero and he's like, I'm just a basketball player, you know?
Yeah. Or like, maybe he didn't feel like it that day.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't feel like putting the whole team on his back that day. It resonates with me because, like I said, I have a line 5. And it's an interesting experience. I think prior to human design, I would get very frustrated and a little woe is me, I think. And like one of my pet peeves that kind of developed in my early 20s was like people assuming that I would take care of it. And that would be in friendship, with colleagues. It would be like, oh, she'll do it. I don't have to show up. I don't have to contribute. I can just like completely abandon my responsibilities because Jennifer won't show up. And it was like a real pet peeve and a real quick way for you to find yourself like no longer my friend, no longer like a person I wanted to work with. And I used to say like, what is it about me that gives them the idea that they can get away with this? And I think human design for me gave me a little bit more freedom. It was like, look, the projection is going to be there. So what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
And so that was, instead of being like, I must be doing something wrong, it's like, they're going to do it anyway. So How do you want to show up?
Yeah.
What's your truth? How do you want to stand into that? Because you can't continue to just buy into whatever someone wants to place onto you. Do your own introspection. If you ain't feeling it, keep it pushing.
That makes sense.
Finally, line number 6, the role model. Their energy is all about the bird's eye view. They are observing life and reflecting on it. But this line's interesting because it doesn't happen overnight. This is not who you are from day one. It's this evolution of experience. So their first 30 years are literally about that. It's just about getting experience. So they can be a lot more actually like a line 3 in that regard. So they're experimenting, they're trying new things, they're seeing what works, what doesn't work. So that's the first 30 years of their life. The next 20 years are about reflection. So then they start saying like, oh, okay, what was I doing here, there? Okay. So people actually might start looking to them at this time as a mentor. And then from 50 years old on, it's about balancing that wisdom that they gained and their experience. So a celebrity who has a 6 line, Barack Obama, we think this is a great example because he was very experimental. I mean, I don't know how scandalous it would be now, but they were like, he was smoking weed. And remember they were just like, he was smoking weed in college.
Yeah.
But he was a little bit more experimental. He had his fro. He was doing different things. And then he kind of emerged from that. And by the time he was like on the national stage, he had the experience and the ability to reflect on it to carry him into the presidency. And now we're seeing, now that he's over 50, he's doing even more of that kind of balancing act and putting his wisdom into his books. And so you kind of see that whole process in his life.
Yeah, with his foundation and how he's like trying to mentor younger political leaders as they come up. You know, he wants to basically pass that wisdom on to the next generation to have, you know, more thoughtful political leaders coming up in the ranks. Yeah. It's interesting. So the elements of those 6 lines can also apply elsewhere in your chart, but we don't want to get too complicated. That's for like the next level advanced course. You can sign up with Jenn for that when she's ready to have that offering. For now, we're going to go through the 12 profiles in human design. So you can see how all this comes together and kind of shows up on your chart readout that you've pulled up. Profiles are a combination of those 6 lines. So Jenn already mentioned how she is a 5-1. I am a 3-5. The first number in that profile is the conscious portion of the profile. And the second number is the unconscious portion. So we'll go through each of those 12 really quickly. First up is the 1-3 profile. 1-3 profiles are the only profile where both numbers are between 1 and 3, which, as Jenn mentioned, that those are all about the individual. So they have a strong focus on how they internally process their own life. They investigate and study, working alone, that's their 1 line, and they experiment, which is their 3rd line. And they're known for their insecurities because they want all of the information, but they also want to experience life on their own terms and experiment on their own. So there's kind of a little bit of a conflict there. And that can, really lead to them experiencing some failures. What they should do is focus on learning from their failures rather than getting down on themselves because of the failure. Also, do not lie to someone with a 1-3 profile. They have a very, very strong bullshit detector. It's like no one else.
Next up, the 1-4 profile. This one, I wonder if they're one of those that feels like they're neither an introvert or an extrovert. They need alone time, but they also need community. Remember, 1 line, introspective, investigator, wants to be alone. 4 is the master networker. They spend their alone time being introspective, and then they share what they've learned with others. When people with a 1-4 profile find the right people who respect their knowledge, they can then become masters at what they've already been interested in investigating when they find the right support in their network. So 1-4s need to get to networking and finding that community.
Moving on to the 2-4 profile. Another one who is unsure if they want to be alone or with others. Remember, the 2 line is the hermit. Similar to the 1-4 profile, they also need to find the right community, but they also need to create a safe space for their alone time. Their alone time is less about research and more about rest. Once they find the right community, their natural gifts can be celebrated. So that's why networking is important.
All right, let's get into the 2-5 profile. This one is interesting when we think about their separate lines. The 2 line or the hermit wants to be alone, has those natural gifts. The 5 line or the heretic gets projected on and is expected to be the hero. So what does that mean for the 2-5? Everybody wants your natural talents, baby. And they've projected onto you that your talents are what's going to save them. What you need to do is listen to your authority. And if you don't know what that is, you need to listen to our episode 33. And from there, discern what you want to say yes and no to. Because remember, the 2 part of your profile needs rest. Basically, others' projections onto you will use you up. So spend your alone time really figuring out where your energy is best spent.
Now to 3-5 profile, the best profile.
So humble, my darling.
So 3-5s, they have the experimentation of the 3 line and the projection of being a hero from others in the 5 line. Others are living vicariously through the 3-5s experiences. 3-5s are very likable with a magnetic energy. A lot of celebrities have a 3-5 profile. One of the drawbacks, though, of a 3-5 is that, they're constantly doing a lot of trial and error. And with that trial and error comes error. And that can really be difficult for a 3-5 to experience, especially when others have put so many expectations on you. So you really have to embrace the ups and downs of life, despite what others think. And that will actually help you call in the right people for you. I think that's really applicable, I think, to my experience as a 3-5.
That you're very likable with magnetic energy.
I would think, my friends and family would say that.
I almost tumbled out of the room because your head was expanding the entire time you were reading that profile.
That comes with the territory of being a 3-5. You're projecting onto me some things.
I'm projecting?
You're projecting onto me.
Well, we see each other. How about that?
No, I think one thing that I have found, though, is that I can be in a space and kind of be like minding my own business. And folks will say there needs to be, there's a lot of these activities where they'll break you up into groups and there needs to be a spokesperson for the group. And I could just be minding my own business, not really saying nothing. And they'll be like, so Mik, you gonna present for us? And I'm like, wait, why am I why did why did I become your default? It's a bunch of people in this group. But for some reason, it's something about my energy where folks will just say you should be the one to go up there and present this. Or you should be, I joined this board for an alumni group from my undergrad. And one of my first meetings, they were like, so yeah, we need a co-president for next year. We think you'd be a good fit. And I was just like, this is my first meeting, guys. I don't even know everybody's first and last name that's on the board. You know what I mean? So it's just I've had scenarios like that pop up a lot. I guess that's the 5 line kind of showing up.
Do others' expectations on you, is that ever a burden? Has that been difficult?
I think so. I can remember back to elementary school. This I don't know why this popped in my head right now at this moment, but there was this workshop that happened on a Saturday. This was elementary school, and it was a workshop to talk about the TOS test, and they wanted to, which is our state standardized test, right? It used to be called TOS. I think it's tax and something else now.
I think it's STAR now.
STAR now, whatever. So it's called TOS. That's how old I am. And I was in the 3rd or 4th grade, and it was a writing workshop. And so we were all
We had
doing this
those.
like writing prompt to like help the kids write better. And one of the key things was like, don't start your story with once upon a time. Like they like kept drilling that into our heads. And so I created this story about these three entertainers who were performing at the Apollo Theater, because I used to watch Apollo with my family. So that was like top of mind.
Shout out to Kiki Shepherd.
So I had this like elaborate story about how these three performers were at the Apollo. And for some reason, out of all the kids in there, the teacher picked up my essay and had me, like, she read it and then was like, I want you to read it to the like the whole room, the whole cafeteria full of like all of the fourth grade kids or whatever. So I read it. And so then we did another prompt, right? It was like you had to do, there was multiple stories that we had to write during this like Saturday session. And I knew they were going to come back to me. I was like, I got to write an awesome story this second time around too. So I felt all this pressure, like they're going to come back to me and ask me to read it again. Sure enough, they did. And I had all this pressure on me to write this really great second story. I don't even remember what that story was about. But I wrote another one that was, I guess, pretty good because they made me read it again. And then everybody was like, oh, good job. I know. Five-line energy as a fourth grader.
I would have been in the back going, boo.
You a hater.
Oh, so he the only one that can write a good story.
I don't know what to tell you, man. 5-line. It's a gift and a curse.
I wanted to ask that because my 5-line is on the conscious part of my profile and yours is on the unconscious part of your profile.
Mm-hmm.
And so profiles can be a little difficult to wrap your arms around sometimes because others are projecting onto me, but it's not about the way that I move. It's about how I see myself, which can kind of be a little bit of inception of like, are they projecting or am I projecting onto them that they're projecting onto me? You know?
Yeah.
But no, they are projecting onto me. Ugh, gosh. But we'll get to that.
All right.
Okay, so we're on to the 3-6 profile, which is an interesting one. Remember, the 6 line is an evolution. So if you have a 6 line, and you're under the age of 30, you probably should think of your profile as like a 3 for that. Just replace it with a 3 for now. So like if you are a 3-6 and you're under the age of 30, you're a 3-3. And in that time of your life, all you do is experiment because that's all a 3 line is. Like you're a super 3 line. But after a 3-6 profile turns 30, for those in astrology, after their Saturn return, they may say, well, what now? I've done all this experimentation. Do I keep experimenting? They may feel pressure from society to leave that time of their life behind and settle down. Like if you think about a 30-year-old who has experimented with different jobs and different relationships and their hair or, you know, like what they do. And they're like, maybe I'm going to go surf for a while. Like society will be like, okay, when are we going to be done with this? Because I don't feel like we really think about experimentation as a lifelong thing. Like that's a young man's game. Like then you have to like turn that down, turn your goofy down. But what a 3-6 profile should do is embrace the chaos of life, learn from your mistakes, and gain wisdom from what you've learned. And that's how they step into that role model part of their profile. But they're probably going to continue experimenting and doing a lot of trial and error and continuing to learn and reflect and give wisdom back to the collective. So that was like a really cool one because it's like it's a constant learning process.
Dope. So next, the 4-1 profile. 4-1 profiles, they know who they are and have a distinct sense of right and wrong. Similar to the 1-4 profile, 4-1s also need to find community to share the things that they've learned. They need to be reminded to stick to their truth, and there's nothing wrong with living their lives externally and sharing with others.
Mm. Next, the 4-6 profile, another 6 line. So for the first 30 years of their life, is experimental as a 3. So they'll experience life as a 4-3. But the 4 line means that this can manifest in their friend groups and in their relationships as to how they experiment. When they hit 30, they may start to question, do I want to be alone? Do I want to be with others? And a fear of rejection from others can also show up for this profile, especially if they've experienced error in relationship, they've experienced rejection. How do you move forward? I think that's also kind of the beauty of trial and error, is like failing, but getting up and like still doing it again. And I think with love, that can be tricky. Love and friends, that can be tricky to put yourself back out there and be vulnerable again. But that 6th line is for them to reflect on what worked, what didn't work, and find that wisdom. So to combat this feeling of, I'm scared, I don't want to be rejected, they need to settle into who they are while keeping their loved ones around them. But they're going to get their validation from within.
All right, let's move on to my second favorite profile. That's the 5-1 profile.
That's your second favorite?
After mine.
Oh my God. My eyes are about to roll straight out of my head.
So people are looking to the 5-1 to be the hero. And the 5-1 actually wants to be the hero and save the day. This isn't because of ego necessarily. They just want to share what they've learned, especially if it can help others. That projection that 5 lines can feel can put pressure on 5-1s. So it's up to them to listen to their human design strategy and figure out from within what they should say yes to and what they should say no to. You're meant to go against the grain, and you love a new project and challenge. So really own that.
Thank you for reading me. For filth. No, I'm just kidding. I love that they said that wanting to be the hero isn't about ego, because it's not. A way that this kind of manifested for me before I had the language of human design for it is that I loved telling people, like if someone new came on at my job, I'd love telling them like, this is how it really works. This is like how this person likes to work. This is how you can get in good with this person. If someone tells you this, it's a bunch of baloney. Because as an only child, in my head, as an only child, I didn't have older siblings to kind of help me navigate through spaces. And I had to figure that out on my own. One line. Mm-hmm. And so I loved being able to share that with someone so they didn't have to work as hard at it. So I guess that's how that kind of comes out for me in that sense. But the projection is definitely still there. And so that's why I've been doing a lot of work. And if I don't do that work, this is why I'm feeling burnt out, is because there are a lot of different people across my organization that come to me for answers. Like, Jennifer will know this. She'll know this. She'll know it. She'll know it. And I'm just like, whoa, like I'm happy to help. Love to save the day for you, help you find that answer. But my Lord. So that's why I have to be like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. That's not worth my energy. Even if I want to do that, it's going to drain me too much. And this is what I have to apply my limited amount of energy towards.
Got it. So moving on to 5-2, similar to the 5-1 profile, they also want to swoop in and save the day. But the 2-line hermit energy, it can sometimes keep others from knowing what talents you actually have that you can share, especially if you have that tendency to keep your gifts and knowledge secret or private. Also remember that 2 lines sometimes overlook their talents because the talents are just so natural to them. So you may need to kind of discover your own genius. How can you recognize yourself more? How can you put yourself out there more? These are the things that the 5-2 should really be asking. And that, with those answers to those questions, that can be, how you find the recognition that you really desire.
Next up, the 6-2 profile. Remember, with the 6s, we have to do the whole evolution thing. So while this profile is younger than 30, they're experimenting, but when they fail, that's when their 2-line actually makes them want to retreat. After 30, it's a time to reflect on what they've learned while experimenting. It's time to be introspective, so leaning on that 2-line, but you're not retreating and hiding from others. You're just using this time to like kind of fall back, rest, reevaluate. When the time comes, people will come to you for your wisdom, and they'll pull you out of that deep introspection And likely a part of that wisdom is one of the gifts that a 2-line might not even notice as a gift. And so asking them to be your role model pulls that hermit out and invites them to share this knowledge and this wisdom with others. And that's when you'll really embody that part of that 6 line.
And last but not least, we have the 6-3 profile. Because the 6 is more of a 3 in the first 30 years, they are essentially a 3-3 during that time. So very similar to what we said about the 3-6. While others with a 6 line will kind of come out of their experimental phase at age 30, the 6-3s will be experimenting their whole lives. This can make 6-3s feel a little restless, like they're always searching for something. But you also have that same lesson that other 6 lines have. Learn from your failures, forgive yourself, and enjoy the ebbs and flows of life.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed that quick overview of the 12 profiles. Go back and look at yours, see what resonates with you, where you might have downplayed your gifts or felt projection from others, or even been upset with your failures, but didn't necessarily celebrate your successes as you experiment. So see how you feel about it.
We would love to hear from you guys some more. We, a couple episodes ago, talked about Victoria and her human design profile. So if anyone else wants to DM us or email us any questions or want us to talk about your human design, we'd love to hear from more folks. So shoot us an email.
Yeah, so we're going to get out of here because I'm sure Mik is going to have to edit several growls of my stomach because I'm starving. But as always, if you have a question, if you want us to look at your human design chart, please email us at chakrasandshotguns@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and YouTube. If you'd like to join our Chakras and Shotguns community, you can support us on Patreon. If you want to check out our website and our merch, chakrasandshotguns.com. And finally, if you're loving the show, please subscribe and give us 5 stars wherever you listen.
Thanks, guys. Namaste.